What's up, guys? We are making strides. We are emerging as leaders, especially in politics. And we are coming up as a people. And that's something to celebrate.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember
I do.
21st night of September? Love was changing the minds of pretenders. Yeah. Chasing the clouds away. I may be down, I'm coming up.
Hands in the air.
I'm coming up.
Hands in the air.
I'm coming up.
Hands in the air. Yeah.
I may be down, I'm coming up.
Hands in the air.
I'm coming up.
Hands in the air.
I'm coming up.
Emojis in the chat. Yeah. We need all that.
You've been down. I've been hurt before. I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. 'Cause I know trouble don't last always. I may be down, I'm coming up.
Hands in the air.
I'm coming up.
Hands in the air.
I'm coming up.
Emojis in the chat. Woo.
I
We
may
need all
be
that.
down, I'm coming up.
Up, up.
I'm coming up.
Hands in the air.
I'm coming up.
Woo, yeah.
Yeah.
Good morning and welcome to the first and hopefully last virtual TLBC Caucus Summit. I am so excited to present this panel to you. I am State Representative Jasmine Crockett of House District 100 out of Dallas. And this panel is about young, Black, and elected officials. And I am so excited to be the one that has the opportunity to moderate this, considering the fact that I just found out by 9 days, I am currently the youngest Black elected state official in the state of Texas. And with that, I am going to turn it over to this wonderful panel so that they have an opportunity to introduce themselves to you. So with that, let's get started with Ms. Aisha Davis.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aisha Davis, and I serve on the Texas State Board of Education, representing District 13, which is Dallas and Tarrant counties. I just turned 40 years old, so Jasmine said she was 9 days. She beat me by those 9 days, y'all. But and I've been loving 40 ever since. So we have three big responsibilities on the State Board of Ed. We decide all the curriculum that students have to know to graduate from Texas public schools. We manage all the different initiatives around schools like teacher preparation, and we control the Permanent School Fund, which is $44 billion used to fund Texas public schools.
Thank you so much. And with that, we will be moving on to Commissioner Kendrick Jones.
Greetings. Thank you guys for having me here today. My name is Kendrick Jones. I'm originally from Houston, Texas. I serve as Waller County Commissioner for Precinct 3, where I graduated from Purdue A&M University, as well as sat on City Council in the city of Purdue as well. I am a firm believer that we do produce productive people and look forward to diving in and engaging in this conversation with the great panelists today.
Thank you so much. Now, Mr. Jones didn't want to share his age, but we will get it before we get done with this panel.
I happen to be elected the youngest county commissioner in the state, 25 years old.
Amen. Thank you so much. And with that, last but definitely not least, it's going to be Mayor Pro Tem Randall.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Randall. I am Mayor Pro Tem for the city of Prairie View, Texas. I am currently 33 years old. I was elected in 2013 at 25. This is my 8th year in office. It is an honor to be here with so much illustrious power and leadership. So I look forward to the conversation.
All right, so this is a little off script for me, but one thing that I noticed is it seems like almost everybody on here is a member of a Black Greek letter organization. I'll start with myself. I am a proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Miss Aisha, do you belong to any sorority by chance?
I absolutely do. I'm a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated, and today is my 18th Zetaversary.
Yay! Well, happy Zetaversary. How about the commissioner and maybe our mayor pro tem?
Yes, I'm a member of the oldest fraternity of them all. I'm part of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
I'm a member of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. You know, some people start it, others have to finish it. But here we go.
Okay, now I bring that up because my sorority really did play a huge role in getting me to this position. My sorors were squarely behind me. They knocked doors, they got on phones, they sent text messages, they did whatever they could to get me into this position. And so I'm curious to know, considering that each and every one of you is actually a member of a Black Greek letter organization, do you feel as if there was something about your organization that either drove you to run or that you felt like helped you to be successful on your run? I'll start with
Yeah,
yes,
I
Commissioner.
guess I dive in. I want to say that my fraternity is a part of the bigger picture for me. Is the reason why I joined the fraternity. Growing up in an inner city community, South Park, Houston, Texas, I seen a lot of alphas and omegas. And just Black fraternities in general, Black fraternities and sororities giving back to their community, whether that was a Christmas event, a toy drive, something of that sort. And I didn't grow up with my father in my life, so the first father figure that I had outside of my grandfather was my fifth grade teacher, and he had this brick sitting on his desk. And I liked the kind of man that he was and all the values and things that he showed. And so that pushed me to, it was funny, I always said it pushed me to search for the light, but also to continue to find that brick. Like, how do I find that brick and have those values as an individual and as a person and as a servant? And so my fraternity, as along with all our fraternities and sororities, kind of must preach the same thing as far as being servants of all, and going back to Martin Luther King and people like him. It was like I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see in my community, and I feel like that started with the visualization of my fraternity.
Thank you for that. Miss Davis.
Yeah, when I was in Baton Rouge, when I first started teaching, I was in a grad chapter where we had a former international president, and she was just amazing. She had her doctorate degree, she worked at Southern University, and she was such a role model. And just seeing the woman that she was, I knew I wanted to step up even more for kids. And now she's a state official in Louisiana. And so just seeing her go into the realm of politics, but being more than just a politician, being a policymaker and really looking at the community, that really inspired me. So now that I'm in Dallas, I happen to be around an amazing chapter of women who have lots of different influence. And when I decided to run, that was one of the first things I did, reach out to them. And I got lots of support, definitely donations, lots of advice, and even sorors from around the country did whatever they could to help support my race. So absolutely, Zeta Phi Beta has been a major support, a major help in everything I've been able to do. And I'm always so grateful to have that support.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem.
Absolutely, and it's weird for me because I would say my support started before I was actually a member of the organization, and so my best friends at the time before I was preparing for my first race were all members of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, and so when it was time for me to start to put in the work to get elected, those were the ones who were on the front lines with me. Those are the ones who were knocking doors and passing out flyers and working the polls with me. And coincidentally, people who I had known for a large portion of my life, who had been mentors and friends of my family, all ended up being members of the organization before I had even realized it, and so it all kind of made sense. And so I have really good friends in all fraternities, and when it was my turn to choose, nobody was surprised. And so you know, when you just fit, and you just fit. And so ever since I've been elected, the fraternity's always been the first support system that I go to whenever it's time to raise money. Before I go out to the public to raise money, I'm going to tap into my chapter. I'm going to say, hey, I need X amount of dollars, and I'll have it by the end of the day, end of the week. And so they continue to push me to excel and continue to push me to have high aspirations. So absolutely, the fraternity continues to motivate me to be the best version of myself as an elected official.
Thank you for indulging me as I went off script. The next thing that I'm curious about is a lot of times people say things like, it's not your time, wait your turn. Those are the things that we often hear, especially as a young person looking to run for office, not just being young and Black. And I'm curious to know, even if people came and said those things to you, what was it that made you say, now is my time? And then I have a follow-up question to that, which the second part of that question is, once you decided now is your time, did you win your election the first time you went out and sought that position? And I'll start with our Mayor Pro Tem.
So I've always said, I mean, just for myself and anyone who was young who wanted to run for office after me, is, you know, if not now, then when? You know, people will always tell you that it's not your time. One, just because they're not ready to relinquish the reins. And so, you know, when I ran the first time, my community was in a position of being stagnant for a significant amount of time. And so it was about, if now is not the time, when is going to be the time? You know, we can't sit around and wait for approval. Sometimes you just have to jump out there and, you know, see what happens. And so people aren't comfortable with change, but we all know that nothing great comes from comfort zone. So you have to make people change sometimes. And you always have to advocate for yourself as being intentional and and being purpose driven to earn the trust of those who you hope to represent and you want their support. And so for the follow-up question, I did indeed win the first time, which was, it was funny. It was a funny race because I had an incumbent, and I also ran against a member of the community whose family was one of the very first families to ever be in our community. So, you know, she had name recognition, and, you know, he had been sitting there for a couple of years. And so it was just one of those things where, you know, if I'm supposed to win, I'm going to win. And so I wasn't worried about wins or losses. Sorry. I wasn't worried about wins or losses. I knew that if it was my time, then God would make room for that and make it happen.
Thank you. And Commissioner?
I'd like to touch on the other part of what my good brother stated. If not now, then when? And if not you, then who? And that was my situation. I felt like God had put me on earth to be a part of the change in which I wanted to see, and to bring as many people together as I could. And so I was approached by a gentleman. I was like, hey, you know, you're getting ready to run for student body president. Have you ever thought about running for city council? I was like, I always thought about politics, but when I thought about politics at that time, I was like, I thought you had to be one, old, and then two, have money. And I knew that I didn't have neither one of those at that time. And so as I do with most of the things in my life outside of politics, I go to God and my mom. And so I went to God and my mom in that situation. It was like, you know, you've always said that you want to be a representation for the people, and why not now? And if God has this for you, then you'll be there. And so he had it for me. I actually ran against 18-year incumbent. And so it was an uphill battle. I also like to say, put out the fact that I was 21 years old. And so I always tell the story about I went to go knock on 3 doors and outside of the university's lines. And 2 of them was like, you don't even know nothing about nothing. So why would I vote for you and stuff like that? One lady, I came to her and I was like, hey, I want to change things. And she was like, baby, I'm 80 some years old. I don't know if it's too much change that I want to see. And she was like, but you know how you can capture my ear? You can use other words like evolve, grow, continue to build, things of that such. And so I got one good perspective, but I went back to what I knew best. And God had blessed me, and then God blessed me for reelection and to be in this seat now. So I think that if it's for you and you're tired of searching for someone else to have the answers, then I mean you can find the answers within yourself and just take a leap of faith. And I think we all are people of faith on this call. And so God or your higher power will direct your steps.
Love it. Love that. I'm gonna definitely have to tell y'all my story after that, but we gonna let Aisha go next. That was great though. Thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, I had similar experiences as well. I was told a lot, well, you haven't really run for anything before. Maybe you should start with local school board and then maybe you can get to the state board. But they have such different responsibilities. And my goal was to make sure that I influenced curriculum. We were working on African American studies even before I was elected to the board. So I had that pushback, but I knew what I wanted to do when I was there. I'm getting my PhD in ed leadership and policy. So that's exactly what I study. That's my expertise, and that's where I wanted to be. So that's what I ran for. My first time ever running, I was successful. I was a teacher, and I partnered up with another teacher. She's actually one of my sorors. And I said, there are no Black women on the State Board of Education right now. I want to be there. I want to represent us well. I want to do a good job, not just for us, but for all the students around Texas. And so we figured it out. So one way or another, we figured it out, and we were able to win very, very successfully by about 78% of the vote. I am up for re-election coming up soon, but this has just been a dynamic journey. And never let anybody tell you it's not your time, you're not ready. If you have the passion, if you have the expertise, get involved before you run, but never let anybody take that away from you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, no, Aisha, I feel you, but I feel like I have to tell the other side of the story because y'all making it look a little too easy, right? Like y'all are just like, yeah, you got the heart for it, so run, and you can get it even at 21 or 25. So I'm gonna tell y'all the other side of the story. While I sit here as an elected official before you today, my very first election was I ran for district attorney in Texarkana. And I was 28 years old when I ran. At that time, the state of Texas had not elected a Black woman as district attorney in any of the 254 counties. And I was somewhat fresh out of law school, but I was led to run because I was frustrated. One of the cases that has stuck with me, it's a case that I'm even writing legislation to this day about, is I had a 17-year-old kid that ultimately was sent to prison for stealing candy out of the concession stand at his high school. And I could not fathom why and how our law would allow something like this to happen. And so I figured, you know what? If y'all are doing that, then let me just change it up. I need to be the DA because I need to make sure that we are protecting those that are most vulnerable, those amongst us that are not necessarily rich, those amongst us that are maybe Black and brown. And I did not feel like those protections existed. So I knew nothing about politics. This was in 2010. So the most that I knew was what I saw with Obama. And honestly, I was like, if he can do it, I can maybe become DA. I was unsuccessful. I won the early vote, lost on election day, and almost became the youngest and first Black female DA to be elected in the state of Texas. We only had Craig Watkins at that time in Dallas. And so then I said, I'm done. You know, that, I mean, just to be clear, running for office is a lot of work, a lot of work. And so then I decided, you know what, the time has come again. So literally a decade later, I decided to get back out there. I did serve as the chair of the Democratic Party, youngest Black chair of the Democratic Party in the state of Texas for about 3 terms. But as far as having a position like this was my first time. So this is technically my second elected position. I did have 5 opponents. It was a lot. I ran for 13 months, and I was outspent 5-1. So I know that, you know, our Commissioner Jones mentioned about the money side of it. Money is a very real side, and I'm going to transition to that. I want to know from y'all as it relates to money, because people need to start talking about money when you're running for office. But I personally don't feel like money is the end all be all. We were outspent 5-1. And I will delve into some of the things that I think helped me, even though, you know, my opponent had $500,000. I'm curious to know, what is your stance and what has your experience been as relates to sometimes when you don't have the money in a race? And do you make a decision not to run because you can't raise the money that you feel like is necessary for you to be successful? And we'll start with Aisha.
I was a little bit fortunate to be on the Democrat ticket. So, no, I wasn't able to raise the hundreds of thousands of dollars that you would see some of the judges raising at all. And at first I was like, is that me? And, you know, as a Black woman, it's hard to raise money. I saw Black women running for lots of different positions and they weren't getting in the donations that other people were. They were amazing candidates. So I just couldn't understand it. But what I would do is anytime a Democratic slate would go out, I would say, how much would I have to pay, you know, to get a little page here? Or, you know, is it possible to do something together? Maybe we can cut our costs. So I was always trying to find somebody who I can join a slate with, a fellow Democrat who I know I believed in, who would be okay to be aligned with. I also did a lot of boots on the ground and door knocking. Me, my manager, anybody else who believed in the campaign and believed, you know, in what we stood for, we would get out there and we would door knock every weekend. But because I covered Dallas and Tarrant counties, that was a big area. So we would go as many places as possible. But we focused on apartments. We focused on areas concentrated where a lot of our candidates don't go. We wanted to make sure they were aware of voting and also aware of me. So that was a lot of the strategy we did. Even though we didn't have a lot of money, we covered a lot of ground, and that's what was most important during my race.
Thank you. And Commissioner.
I'll say that I've seen 2 different sides of it. And to where I'm getting to the point of like throughout my young career in politics, it's probably like my experience comes, and I have probably like 7 years of experience, either that's running a campaign myself, helping somebody else run a campaign, helping somebody else finance, like fundraise and different things like that. So learning the skill of the game. My biggest thing like in life is like you milk from the cow till you can't milk it no more. So you see how people that don't look like us play this game, and how are they having the tools and resources to be able to raise money. So when I first ran, it was like, no, Mom, we don't come from some lineage where we have money. How we gonna make this work? She like, well, baby, we're gonna go to our village. And so you're seeing that your village and people that supported me throughout my time, throughout me growing up and different things like that, they found a way to be like, Kendrick, what you need? Or I need signs. Which you want T-shirts, you want this, and different people start sponsoring different things. And I think that, I mean, all of us on the phone have it, but sometimes with a lot of Black candidates that you see running statewide are afraid to ask for money. We are afraid to hear the answer no. If you don't ask, people won't give it to you, regardless if they don't look like us. And so, like running for my county race 4 years later after being reelected to city council, I started seeing people that don't look like me milking that cow. Like, hey, how are they going about raising money? Like, yeah, this person might get them $5,000, but I can still go to them to say, hey, could you give me 1,000 or two? And if I keep going to so many different people, then I start building up that empire of raising funds and going to those pockets where people that normally don't ask for money. So it's like, oh yeah, nobody ever asked me for this before. Oh yeah, and then you've been elected before too. Oh yeah, we'll write you a check here. So I say the first thing is like, don't be afraid to ask and don't be afraid to hear the answer no. And then also like, don't let that deter you, because I did also like use resources, use my friends, use my fraternities, use like different people that I met throughout my time. The older I've been able to get, the more important I realize a phone is, and to be able to have 1,000 contacts, 2,000 contacts. Like at one point, it's like I'd meet somebody in a room and be like, oh, I don't need their contact information. That was like a good conversation, leave it where it's at. But now I got to a point where it's like, oh, we had a 5-10 minute long conversation. You was able to teach me something. I need your number. What do you do? Being intentional. So that way, whenever you do think about running for a race or something like that, even fundraising for a nonprofit or anything, you have contacts and you have the resources to be able to pull from, building that network. So that way you won't run into that same problem time after time again, because now you have somebody that knows somebody that, hey, you gave it, somebody called, hey, I gave this person $1,000, I need you to match it. And then you start and continue to build off that.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem.
So yeah, I agree with what everyone said already. But I'd also like to add, there's kind of two sides of the coin. You want to say that money's not, or shouldn't be the end all be all, but the game that we play, if you want to win against the people who don't look like us, they raise money, so you need to raise money. But it's also important to remember that your money doesn't buy you votes. Money buys you accessibility. And so where you lack in money, you need to make up with your time and your relationships. And so if you can't afford to get a TV commercial or radio ad, that means you need to spend that much more time in the streets, knocking on doors in front of people, building those relationships. I think that kind of goes hand in hand when we talk about actually raising money. Because like I said, we can't be naive to think that we don't need to raise money, because running campaigns aren't free and they aren't cheap. And so you always have to start at home, especially when you're running larger scale campaigns. If you can't raise money at home, you probably shouldn't be running for office, because if your home team doesn't support you, how are you going to convince people from elsewhere to support you? So you always start at home and you tap into the resources that you know are going to come through for you. You always want, and I'm like anybody else, I've always had a hard time asking people for money. Well, early on I did, because it was just like, I don't know if it's a pride thing or you don't want to be told no, but it's just like, I'm just going to run and I'm just going to do it on my own. But ultimately that's not possible. And so, you have to take the modesty out of it. And then you also have to ask for what you need. You can't be shy. If you need to raise $10,000, you need to tell people that you need to raise $10,000. Don't ask for 75 cents. No, my goal is that if I'm going to be successful, these are the resources that I need. And even if one or a couple of individual people can't help you attain that, everybody can tap into their own resources to help you attain it if they truly support you, right? Because I know when it's time for me to raise money and people will say, man, here's $100, but here, call this person, tell them I told you to call, and they got $100 for you too. And so your relationships, the time that you put in, you have to be intentional about the things you said, as Commissioner Jones said. And ultimately, you have to be in front of the people, because you can raise $10 million and not win an election because people don't know you, they don't trust you, they don't believe in you.
I couldn't agree more. I started this off with the fact that I was outraised 5-1. I was out endorsed. Beto O'Rourke came and knocked on doors for my opponent, our county judge, any state rep that did endorse, they endorsed on the other side. Wendy Davis, you name it. My opponent had everything that you would think would prove to be a successful campaign. But I had the people, right? And so y'all talked about that. And the reality is that we had more volunteers on our state rep race than I've ever seen on plenty of other races. We had probably an army of about 200 volunteers that actually were willing to knock, were willing to call, were willing to text, of all ages. And so that brings me to kind of my next transitional point before we get close to wrapping up. And that is, I actually volunteered on a number of campaigns before I ever ran for office. I thought it was important to help out those that I really believed in. And it's difficult to recruit volunteers, and I understand that. So I'm curious to know, number one, did you ever volunteer on someone else's campaign before you ran for office? And number two, what tips would you give someone on what it takes to actually recruit volunteers to your campaign? And I'll start with, yes, Mayor Pro Tem.
So funny thing is I did volunteer for a campaign before running for office, but it wasn't because I was super interested in politics or I had political aspirations. I was laying on the couch. I didn't have any money. One of my mentors called me and said, "Hey, you want to make some money?" I said, "Sure." So he called me up, brought me in, and asked me to work the polls. So I did. I didn't know much about politics. I had no interest in politics, but I knew I was hungry. I could use a few dollars. So that's kind of what. But it ultimately ended up springboarding me into the political atmosphere. We just the things that I witnessed, just working the polls and those things. And so so the second part of the question, for us, me and Commissioner Jones, with us being in the college town, we don't have a hard time getting volunteers for the simple fact that we have a lot of students who have high aspirations, but also they like getting community service hours. But one thing that I've always taken a point of doing, even though they would volunteer just because they need the hours, we're gonna have a sit down, we're gonna have a conversation. I'm gonna tell you who I am, what I'm about, and ultimately I'm going to tell them, I'm going to give them who I am, because I don't want you supporting me because you need community service hours. I want you to support me because you believe in the vision and you believe in the representation that I intend on giving. So when it comes to volunteers, it goes back to raising money. If people believe in the vision and they believe in what you're going to bring to them and how you're going to serve them, people will volunteer for you just like they'll donate money to you. You know, people who never volunteer, never donate money, and people who never really vote come out and volunteer. They donate money and they vote for people who have inspired them and made them want to get active and get involved. So it's all about what you're giving people, and what your return is going to be, because the people are ultimately going to invest in you. So you have to communicate to them what the return is going to be.
Thank you. And Commissioner.
I stated earlier that I had worked on a couple campaigns. I still will get out and work on a couple campaigns just to be able to get my insight and advice on how to get either young Blacks to come out and vote, millennials to vote, rural communities to come out and vote. If I believe in the vision of what you have, and also I believe in you can't have enough resources. So if you help somebody get somewhere, guess who the first person they're gonna call on when they need something or when they need information and all those kind of different things it's kind of like you always have a seat at the table or a foot in the room. And so another component that I learned and think that all of us as Blacks should know and to pick up the habit of giving. Like if you believe in someone campaign, it doesn't matter if it's $5 or $10. I know last session I had the opportunity to work closely with the Texas Agriculture Council, and that room is a bunch of males who do not look anything like me, but taught me one thing: they would give to each senator and each state representative that came to speak to them. Like if you came in that room, they would give to you. And I was like, why? If they don't believe or, they know nothing about agriculture. And it was like accessibility. Like for us to say that we donated to your campaign, you're going to sit down to have a conversation with me. You're going to sit down to hear my issue or problem. So I'm like, oh, even if I have $5, there you go. I'll pop up on your donor list. Hey, I gave to your last campaign, because regardless of what that 520, however much money you get, it helped towards something to go towards that fundraiser. And so always volunteer. Try if you can give $1 or so. And then as well as my brother touched on, like, we never have an issue, I think, as far as getting volunteers because of the unique situation that we are in. But I know some of the things that make me feel good in the inside is when I have the seasoned citizens that come and volunteer to say, hey, baby, I'll make a couple phone calls for you and things like that, because that's how you know you actually going about an impact and change. And now you have a diverse community believing in you and your vision. So it's just sitting down, making sure that you hear the people out, because that's what we're in this realm to be able to do. And then if you want to be here, make sure you're working for us. Go ahead and work somebody's campaign. One, so you can learn what not to do. You can learn what to do and how to perfect things when and if you ever are put in that predicament to run your own campaign.
Stay real Crockett. Could I interject really quick?
Yes.
Could you have Commissioner Jones expound on what he said about getting that support from the seasoned citizens and talk about his first race in comparison to his second race, and then in comparison to his commissioner's run?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
I'm sorry, I just take up a short period of time, but my first time running, I didn't get that much community support. I think I wound up winning my race probably like by 50-something%. And that was just probably just like with 10 votes from the community, and the rest was from students. The next go around, I ran my race, got up to about 87% of the city vote mixed in with the students. And then actually, while I was running for re-election for my city council race, more of the seasoned citizens came to me and said, baby, if you're going to stick around and, make this your home, then we don't want you to run for city council no more. We want you to run for county commissioner. And at that time, it was like, hold on, I'm in my, I'm running for re-election. Let me finish this race, and then I'll look into what all that entails. And then I started getting more and more phone calls, more and more community members saying, hey, we'll support you if you go ahead and do it. And it goes back to all the things that we said. Once you're involved and people see the work that you do, even though you think that, you want to run for something, God will put you in that predicament and have people supporting you, so that way you go ahead. And then I was blessed to able to receive 57% of the vote, being a two-time incumbent this time with the support of the entire community, not just one bucket.
I love that. Thank you so much. And Ms. Davis, and then we're going to go to our last question after this.
The only other thing I want to add is just to engage our young people. A lot of them are hungry to get involved in, and they want to be engaged in what's going on in the political world. So me as a teacher, I was always able to talk to my juniors and seniors and tell them, hey, did you know this was going on? Did you know this vote is going on? Did you know this person was running for these different positions? They want to be informed and they want to know. So if you're looking for some volunteers that are hungry to get in the streets, to put that word out, to get involved, to stay involved, then really and truly engage the young people around your communities as well.
I agree. All right. So, wrap up question. One thing that I love about this panel when we were putting it together was that it wasn't just Black women. We have young, educated Black men that are in positions of power. And considering what we saw over the summer with the protest, the fact is, this recording is taking place in the week that the George Floyd trial has started. And so I am curious to know, from your perspective, what legislative priorities do you think should be on the table in light of where our country is on a state level as well as a federal level, and even you guys are policymakers, right? Even in your specific realm, considering where we are in this country, what legislative changes do you think need to be a priority? If you can give me just like one, because we're running out of time. All right, we'll start with Commissioner.
I'll say the one bill that, and yes, I'm selfish. Me being a county commissioner and seeing it impacts my community is House Bill 1888 that was passed in the last session, and how inadequate it allows for people to go out and vote, and pushing and trying to get our policymakers to see where these bills come from, who invented the bill, and what is their purpose for this bill. Because when you do homework and do research about a person and see why they put this bill, sometimes if people not caring about everyone, it can be very self-sufficient and what they're doing. And I think that this bill has divided my community and hurt us in a very harmful way. And I don't think that it helped most people by being the state mandate. Like, allow counties to do what we're here to do. We're supposed to we know the locations that's best for our community, put the voting polls, allow us to make it accessible to all. It took away, especially in rural communities, it took away from you being able to have a voting box here for 3 days for people to be able to get to that location. Now people have to drive miles and thousands and hundreds of miles to go and have a right to vote. Now on top of that, we have a university to where it's divide between the county and the university to where we couldn't put a poll on campus for 3 to 5 days to allow students that voting box to be able to go out and vote. And so it's just about making sure everyone is included into the process with every bill and not self-serving and self-sufficient to just one community.
Absolutely. So what I hear you saying is that you absolutely believe in local control, especially when we're talking about voting. We saw what happened in Houston with, I believe, our Mayor Pro Tem's fraternity brother, Mr. Hollins, as he was trying to make sure that voting was more accessible. And sadly enough, what we are experiencing in the state of Texas, I think they looked at Georgia and got a little nervous. So there's a number of bills to make sure that access to the voting box, especially for those that are coming from historically disenfranchised communities, continue down a road of disenfranchisement, and it's very concerning, especially considering where we are. To the thought that people feel like they have to cheat in order to win, instead of just promoting this idea of inclusion and accessibility. And Texas is next, regardless of what anybody else thinks. I do believe that now that we done got Georgia out the way, Texas is absolutely on its way. Texas has more African Americans, period, than any other state. And so it's about making sure that our voices are heard and exercised in a free and reasonable election. So thank you so much for your awareness and your point on that issue. And Ms. Davis, what is the one legislative thing that you think we should focus on?
Oh, the Crown Act. I'm really, really supporting that piece of legislation however I can. Unfortunately, we don't have authority at the state board. If I could, I would put some policies in place like yesterday to support our students. I think I think it's very bad that we're suspending students because of the natural hair that's growing out of their head. And I really, really hope that this bill does pass to protect our students. It is definitely my priority when it comes to education and to our kids.
Thank you so much. And just for those of you that don't know, the Crown Act has been filed here in the state of Texas, and it is being championed by my sorority sister, Retta Bowers. So please follow her, support her in any way that you can. Make sure that you're calling those persons that sit on the committee that will hear that, which I believe it's State Affairs. I believe she has not been granted a hearing just yet. So we may need to apply a little bit of pressure to get some movement on that bill. But thank you so much for your insight. And finally, Mayor Pro Tem.
Oh, and I want to say, and thank you for your support of the Crown Act as well.
I do, just so y'all know. I am about that life. I am natural on most days. So no, so I absolutely support the Crown Act. We just have different things that we kind of are on the front lines for. And so I am there to back up my sister in any way that I can.
So for me, first, I'll just say that the legislation that both panelists have already put out were absolutely on my list as far as voting, Crown Act. I would also throw anything that has to pertain with education out there, because even though I'm I'm an assistant principal by profession. And so anything that makes education better for our children, I stand with that. But ultimately, before anything and outside of everything, I'm a Black man. So anything criminal justice related, prison reform, I stand on that. I know the George Floyd Act is something that's being talked about and being pushed right now, and so I'm definitely in support of that. We passed something similar in our city over the summertime to get the ball rolling, to get the conversation started. But ultimately, it needs to be a statewide thing, a national-wide thing about how we're policed, how we're reformed, and ultimately, people shouldn't be afraid of those who are hired to protect the service. And so we're going to stand and fight for anything that makes our community safer, even if it means dealing with those who are supposed to keep us safe.
No, I love that. Thank you so much. And I love how in tune y'all are. For me, because I've got to chime in, especially since I have filed over 60 bills. So I had a few priorities, filed more bills than any other freshman, and I am working my jelly, to say the least, on actually getting hearings. And so one bill that I thought would be more symbolic of nature than anything, considering the numbers that we have in the House, was my bill to ban no-knock warrants. But we actually had a very successful hearing on that particular bill, to the extent that, number one, I have the votes to actually get it out of committee. But we are actually now working to get it to where it is a unanimous vote out of committee. And I have some colleagues on the other side of the aisle that are willing to assist me in trying to get that actually pushed through, so that the governor will actually sign it. And I thought, I'm the civil rights girl, so I'm filing this and y'all do what y'all do. But you know what? You never know. And as every panelist has stated so eloquently, God places you where you need to be when you need to be there. And it's not really up to man to tell you different. So when you feel compelled to run, the one thing that I would say is, number one, make sure that you do your research. Make sure that you know why you're running and you understand the position that you're running for. In addition to that, make sure that, like everyone else has suggested, whatever your faith is, make sure you turn to whomever you turn to, and make sure that you've got that support coming from that angle as well. And lastly, never ever be afraid, because you are looking at greatness. I can only imagine where these panelists are going. They are just getting started, and there's no reason that you can't get started. So thank you so much to each of you for taking time out to participate. I really appreciate you. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart for everything that you do to serve all of us in the state of Texas. And with that, we're done.